to find that information out is this is probably one of my favorite searches on the platform is to search for the lawyer. So again, don't hold it against me. I know I keep on saying this, but I grew up, practiced law as a plaintiff's attorney. I looked up to Keith Mitnick as someone I wanted to mimic, right? Keith Mitnick is one of the biggest litigators in the country. He'll take cases anywhere. You can find his pro hoc VJs, throughout the country. He doesn't typically show up on a case unless it's got a trial date. And it's usually 7 figures or more. So what can we learn? Well, he's written 3 books. We can read his books, of course, and inside of his books, he has his sample opening statement. He's got his sample jury instructions. He's got sample everything. The beauty of Trellis is I don't even need to read his books. I can actually see what he's filed. So by running the search for Keith Mitnick, right, I don't put any party in there because he may not be identified by the court in that party section as the attorney because he comes into the case well after discovery's already been concluded. He's usually just showing up to run the trial, if you will. I can plug his name in here. I can also plug his email address. If I wanted to, I could plug his bar number because if I bounce over to the document portion, this is the gold. This is 80,000 documents across the country where Keith Mitnick, one of the preeminent trial lawyers, right, in the country right now, working for Morgan & Morgan. And if you're not familiar with Keith Mitnick, he was profound in turning the tobacco litigation on its head, right? The tobacco industry said originally, hey, you knew about the risk. You were smoking cigarettes. You can't bring a case against us, or the spouse of the deceased can't bring a case against us. He turned it on its head, right? So he eventually then aligned with Morgan & Morgan. Well, we can find all that data. That's the beauty. Because, for example, if I wanted to just do a quick research on Keith Mitnick, I type in jury instructions, filter it in his documents. I still have a substantial number. It's almost, 8,000 documents where jury instructions are there. Well, really what we're searching here is anywhere Keith Mitnick filed, for example, jury instructions. We're going to get those ones. We're also going to see the jury instructions where he was copied in the certificate of service, right? The defense filed jury instructions and they included his name in here because we're searching for both his name or his email address. And think about that. When we're filing documents as attorneys, we include our name, our bar number, our law firm name, our physical address, our cell phone number. You can find all of that data. And here at Trellis, we're indexing it. Well, the biggest teaching component I will tell for folks is don't ever worry about the title of documents on Trellis. What you need to be concerned about is just the meat and potatoes, the plain text inside the document. And that's where the gold exists. So if I wanted to filter this one step further, right? Let me see Keith Mitnick's wrongful death jury instructions. I know the tobacco ones are going to pop up as most relevant because they're typically the most researched, especially by law schools. They like using this for teaching purposes. But now what I can do to take this a step further, if I was on the defense side and Keith Mitnick pops up in my case, one, alert my carrier, let him know that there's a potential nuclear verdict coming that way. But what I probably want to do is also come to Trellis, see if he's in front of the same judge that we're currently in front of, right? So I can take a look at all these judges and say, I'd like to see how we practiced in front of that judge before, or at a minimum, at least look up the jurisdiction, right? So, and this is a good teaching point. Orange County, Florida is the headquarters for Morgan & Morgan. But look, he's only got 86 jury instructions and wrongful death cases in Orange County. He's got more in Miami-Dade. He's got more in Palm Beach, right? This guy practices everywhere. And what I don't want to do is say, okay, let me just look up, their headquarters. I want to look up where he's actually practiced or where my case actually sits. So I'll pick on one of my favorite counties in all of Florida, Hillsborough. All I got to do is filter it here. And now I'm looking at just those documents that were filed in just that specific county, wrongful death, jury instructions with Keith Mitnick, right? Hyper-focused. Now there's one other tool that we can use similar to the judge analytics, right? If you don't want to go so granular with respect to the lawyer, you want to take a more holistic approach, like just get an idea of the types of cases they practice, their pattern of practice. I'm going to save you an anecdote at the bottom here. We can do what we call an attorney analysis. Now, this is on a state-by-state basis, right? So you have to be cognizant of, I can only do it for Keith Mitnick in Florida, or maybe I want to see his cases in California, New York. I think he actually sued Major League Baseball of all people in New York. So you could run on him in New York if you wanted to. But we're essentially saying, hey, run an analysis on all of his cases and just give me the head notes, right? So we're going to see, for example, just some real basic cases that give you an idea of the types of cases Keith Mitnick will jump on with hyperlinks that'll take you into it. So if you want to see how he handled this case from start to finish, you can jump into it. Again, teaching point, this is RJ Reynolds Tobacco, big time case, understand how we flipped their whole liability on the head here. But at the bottom, we're gonna hit some very high statistics head notes on who the attorney is, right? Here's how I use this, right? And I'm gonna let you guys behind the curtain to a certain extent. There's a Fortune 100 company, that insurance carrier, that uses this on every single plaintiff's attorney that files a case. And think about why. What they are trying to do is they want to bite off as much liability, as much expense as possible earlier on in the case. They do not want to write a $10,000 check to have someone defend a case if they can settle it for a fraction of that immediately. So they will run this on plaintiff's lawyers to get an idea of, does this guy even practice a wrongful death case? Does he even practice a car wreck case? Does he even practice a slip and fall case relative to what it is? And while they can see, right, Keith Mitnick's a poor example because he does take cases all the way to trial. What they ultimately come down to do is look right here. Individual case durations. What they look for, that insurance carrier, is they want to see either the lawyer, right, is a criminal defense lawyer and he just happened to stumble into a slip and fall case, right? And he's just looking to take the first offer that they give. And they're going to see that here, right? These cases spanning 15 years, 6 years, 3 years. When they do this on a lawyer and they say, ooh, the case only lasted 2 months, it lasted 8 months, this one lasted 6 months, or they go to case outcomes and they see no trial experience in here, they know they can make a below market offer and that lawyer's going to take the case. They've bitten off their liability and they're moving on to the next one. This is how this is fundamentally being used, even at a high level. They don't even have to deep dive like we just did on Keith Mitnick. So lots of different use cases here. Again, the big takeaway is you got to do it per state, right? Because lawyers that go across state lines, they may not always practice the same type of case in the same state that they typically do. So keep that in mind when you're